At the beginning of the story, we see a man named Frank and his son Miles, who are stuck in traffic. Their dog Albert is also in the car, and Miles is playfully eating chips with the dog. Seeing this, Frank tells Miles that he shouldn't eat so many chips because they're not good for health. But Miles doesn't listen to his father, which makes Frank angry. He says, "Because of you, we're late to visit the hospital." Actually, Miles's mother, Lana, is seriously ill and has been admitted to the hospital for a long time. When Frank scolds Miles, the boy gets upset and gets out of the car, walking away from his father. As Frank tries to stop him, they suddenly hear strange noises coming from an ambulance parked nearby. A creature, half human and half bird, emerges from the ambulance. Seeing this creature, everyone stuck in traffic panics. It turns out that a virus has spread across the world, and whoever gets infected transforms into a strange animal-like creature. The government is trying to capture these creatures to research them and find a cure that can turn them back into humans. Two people come out of the ambulance to catch the bird-like creature, but it attacks them and escapes. Frank and Miles quickly get back into their car and rush to the hospital. There they see another creature. This one is a small child with a lizard-like face, also infected by the virus. Frank and Miles meet a doctor who tells them that Lana's condition has improved, but she still can't be taken home. In fact, she's being transferred to another city for further treatment. When they go to meet Lana, it's revealed that she too has been infected by the virus and transformed into a creature. Since Lana is being transferred to another hospital, Frank decides to move to that city with Miles. After moving, Frank rents a house and starts working as a chef at a local restaurant. Miles is enrolled in a school in the same city. On his first day, Miles introduces himself to his new classmates. A girl named Nina asks him about his parents, and Miles lies, saying his mother died in an accident. He doesn't want anyone to know the truth about his mom. Nina then shares that she has ADHD, which makes her very curious and leads her to ask many questions, and she asks Miles not to take it the wrong way. Miles finds Nina likable. After school, Miles visits the restaurant where his father works and meets the owners, Naima and Jack, who tell him that although the city is beautiful, people dislike the hospital for infected individuals, which the government has set up nearby. That night, a storm hits, and the power goes out in Frank's house. While Frank is fixing the power, Miles sees a creature outside the window, but it disappears as soon as the lights come back on. Miles doesn't tell his father about it. The next morning, Frank receives a call from the police. They inform him that the bus carrying Lana had an accident and sank into a lake. Frank rushes to the lake with Miles, searching for his wife. The police stop him and explain that the bus had many infected passengers, some of whom died and others escaped into the forest. A police officer named Julie consoles Frank and assures him that they're searching for Lana and will find her soon. Later that night, Frank is seen hanging clothes outside. When Miles asks why, Frank says that Lana, now part animal, might use her heightened sense of smell to find them. Miles insists she's not coming back and tells his father to stop, but Frank doesn't listen. The next day at school, the teacher takes all the students outside to play a game of tug-of-war. Miles's team is losing, but suddenly Miles pulls the rope on his own and defeats the other team. Everyone is shocked by his strength. Miles himself feels something strange is happening to him. The boy named Jordan is impressed by Miles's strength and invites him to a party at his house. Excited, Miles runs home and begins examining his fingernails, which now appear different. He pulls one off and sees it resembles an animal's claw. This confirms that Miles, too, has been infected by the virus and is beginning to transform into a creature. He also notices a strange mark on his back and realizes that he will eventually become an animal. Saddened by this, Miles breaks down in tears. The next morning, Frank goes to a supermarket to buy some supplies, where he runs into Julie. Julie tells Frank that there's still no news about Lana, but some infected individuals have been found and are being taken care of. Suddenly, they hear people screaming. A man informs Julie that there's a creature in the market that looks like a human. This makes Frank think Lana might be nearby, so he starts calling out for her and searching. Julie and Frank soon spot a child that looks like an octopus who runs away in fear. Julie manages to catch him. Meanwhile, Frank sees another child under a table who looks like a bird. Frank tries to talk to him, assuring him that there's no need to be scared. Just then, an officer arrives and tells Frank to leave, then picks up the bird-like child and places him in an ambulance. Later, as Frank is loading supplies into his car, Julie approaches and asks why he bought weapons. Frank lies and says they're for camping. Julie warns him against going into the forest and leaves. But in reality, Frank had bought all the supplies for Lana, hoping to find her and help her survive in the woods. The next morning, Frank tries to wake up Miles, but he refuses to get up. A little while later, Miles receives a message from Nina asking if he's coming to Jordan's party on Friday. This makes Miles happy, and he gets out of bed and joins his father. Frank then tells him about the two infected kids he saw in the supermarket, which makes him believe that Lana must still be alive. He tells Miles that they will go to the forest on Friday to search for her. Miles tells his dad that he has a party to attend that day. Frank insists that finding Lana should be more important right now, but Miles ignores him and goes to his room. Frank finally gives in and says, "Fine, you can go to the party, but come home early." On Friday, Miles goes to the party and drinks a lot. Jordan talks about his father's sword and others discuss the human-like creatures. Suddenly, Miles collapses. Nina gives him a tablet to reduce the intoxication, but Miles starts licking her hand like a dog. Everyone is shocked by his behavior, a result of the changes happening in his body. Miles steps away from the crowd and hears an animal cry coming from the forest, so he runs toward it. The next morning, we see Miles sleeping in the forest while police are searching for infected people. He hides from their boat, fearing they'll capture him now that he's infected. His mouth is smeared with blood, suggesting he hunted and ate an animal. Miles returns home quickly, feeling like something is stuck in his throat. When Frank enters, Miles locks himself in the bathroom, hiding the fact that he's infected. Moments later, he coughs up a bird feather and realizes he had eaten a bird the night before. Later, Frank and Miles go into the forest to look for Lana but can't find her. Frank reassures Miles that they'll find her together. As night falls, they both sleep in the car. The next morning, Miles wakes up and sees a bird running into the forest. He follows it. Suddenly, a bird-like infected boy attacks him, the same creature we saw at the beginning of the movie. Another creature, a small child, watches from a tree. The bird boy claws at Miles's hand, making it bleed. But when he looks into Miles's eyes, he realizes Miles is infected too and doesn't kill him. Just then, Frank arrives and rescues Miles from the creature. He decides to take Miles to the hospital. On the way, they reach a checkpoint manned by police officers, including Julie. Now, Julie. Julie approaches Frank after seeing him and upon noticing the blood coming from Miles' hand, she asks about his injury. Frank lies and says that Miles was bitten by a dog, which is why they're going to the hospital. However, Miles refuses to go to the hospital because he knows that if he does, the doctors will find out about his infection. Since Miles doesn't want to go to the hospital, Julie takes him to the police station to get his wound treated. There, Julie tells Frank that if he ever needs any kind of help, he should let her know. Afterward, Frank and Miles return home, where Miles removes a few stitches from his wound and starts licking his blood. The next day, during his lab class, Miles sees a feather in Nina's locket that looks exactly like the one that came out of his throat. Curious, he grabs Nina's locket and asks about the feather. Nina gets angry and says he should ask for permission before touching someone. After this, everyone returns to studying, but Miles can't concentrate because the noise from the mice in the lab distracts him. Eventually, he yells at the mice, which shocks all the students. After school, due to the physical changes happening in his body, Miles is unable to ride his bike and falls off. Nina then asks him to walk with her. During the walk, Miles apologizes and says he didn't mean to insult her by licking her hand at the party. Nina forgives him and invites him to her house. At her house, Nina takes a dead bird out of her fridge and tells Miles that she found it outside her gate after the party. She used one of its feathers for her locket. Miles realizes that he was the one who had left the bird outside her house as a gift because he liked her. Later, Miles goes to a lake, catches a fish, and starts eating it raw, during which a woman sees him and is horrified. He runs away. Then Miles returns to the place where he met the bird-like human. He sees that this bird-like boy is trying to fly, but keeps falling. Miles offers him the fish he brought and asks for his name and about his mother. The bird boy says he doesn't remember his real name, so he calls himself Fix and says he doesn't know anything about Miles's mother. Since Fix gets hurt while trying to fly, Miles tells him he needs a safer place to practice. He takes him to a lake and clears the floating logs so that Fix can fall into the water instead of the ground and avoid injury. That evening, when Miles is returning home, he again fails to ride his bike and leaves it in the forest. Meanwhile, we see Frank working. While taking out the trash, he hears strange noises and suspects it might be Lana. He calls out to her and moves toward the sound, but suddenly another creature attacks him. This creature is chained and is about to kill Frank when Naima arrives and saves him. Naima tells the creature to calm down, and it listens to her, but the chains cause it distress, so it runs outside the restaurant, scaring all the customers. Frank still believes Lana is nearby, so he goes deeper into the forest and finally sees a bear-like creature. It turns out to be Lana, who has completely transformed into an animal. Naima then tells Frank that the creature that attacked him earlier is her sister, whom she had been hiding. Soon, the army arrives and begins searching for the creature. Meanwhile, at school, Miles loses a tooth during lunch, and all the students make fun of him, which causes him to leave school. He goes to meet Fix, who is still trying to fly but keeps falling into the water. When Fix takes a break, Miles applies medicine to his wounds. Then Miles removes the bandage on Fix's face and sees that it is badly disfigured. Fix tells him that doctors tried to remove his growing beak through surgery. Miles treats Fix's wounds and rebandages his face. Up in the tree, another creature is sitting, whom Fix calls Frog. But Miles says he looks more like a lizard or chameleon. Elsewhere, Julie helps Frank in his search for Lana. While walking through the forest, they don't find any creatures, but Frank finds Miles's bike, which shocks him. He brings it home. At home, when Frank is washing his hands, the sink suddenly gets clogged. While clearing the pipe, he finds hair and nails, which makes him realize that Miles is infected and turning into an animal. As soon as Miles returns home, Frank asks him to show his nails, but Miles refuses. Then Frank gives him the bike and asks him to ride it, and Miles understands that his father knows the truth. He tries to run away, but Frank catches him and hugs him tightly. The next morning, Frank serves Miles breakfast. Miles eats it like an animal, but Frank doesn't say anything, and instead, Frank gives Miles some medicines, but Miles refuses to take them because he knows they won't help him. Before going to school, Frank checks Miles' teeth, which have become very sharp. Frank tells him to cut his nails daily so that no one suspects he is infected. He also puts cotton in Miles' ears to block out noise and tells him about a cream to remove body hair. Julie then arrives at their home and leaves with Frank to look for Lana. Meanwhile, Miles goes outside and talks to Nina on the phone. He asks her to scream and holds the phone away from his ear. When Nina screams, he hears it clearly, even from kilometers away. This makes Miles realize that he can now hear sounds from far away. The next day, Miles visits Fix and discovers that Fix can no longer speak like a human. He only makes bird sounds. Miles hugs him, and then Fix climbs a tall tree and jumps off, successfully flying. This makes Miles extremely happy. That night, there's a party at Frank's restaurant. During the party, Jack tells Frank that 2 of their pigs have gone missing, and that Miles hasn't shown up, which makes Frank angry. He finds Miles and scolds him for not cutting his nails. When Frank tries to cut his nails by force, Miles bites his father on the shoulder. In return, Frank threatens him with scissors, and Miles runs away. Later, Miles meets Nina, who invites him to walk through a field. As they become intimate, Nina feels the animal-like bones growing on Miles' back. She says she knows about it, and that she likes him anyway. They then return to the party. In the restroom, one of Miles' classmates confronts him, saying he saw Miles with Nina and knows his secret. He uses a small device to emit a high-pitched sound that causes Miles great pain. Out of fear and anger, Miles attacks the boy and scratches his face before fleeing into the field. The boy tells everyone at the party that a creature has entered the party, and people arm themselves and call the police. They head to the field and release dogs to find Miles. But Miles barks at the dog, scaring it away, a sign that he's turning into a wolf. The hunters begin shooting, and Miles runs away. Frank, now aware that the hunters are trying to kill Miles, rushes to save him. Fix arrives just in time and kills one of the hunters with his claws. Miles and Fix flee into the forest, but a hunter shoots Fix, killing him. Miles is devastated and cries over Fix's body. Later, Frank and the hunters find Fix's body, but Miles is nowhere to be seen. The next day, military trucks move into the forest to capture all the infected creatures. Miles is hiding in the forest and eating fruits to survive. At night, he climbs a tree and howls like a wolf. The next morning, Miles sees bear paw prints and follows them. As night falls, it begins to rain heavily, and Miles hides in a cave. Soon, a bear approaches him, but he realizes it's his mother, who has transformed into a bear. They nuzzle each other, and Lana, his mother, walks away, with Miles following. Behind, following Lana, Miles reaches a place where all the infected people, now creatures, are hiding. At that moment, the lizard-like child sees a glowing light in the sky from a military helicopter. The army has found them. Mile and the other creatures try to hide, but the army throws smoke bombs and knocks everyone unconscious. The lizard child camouflages himself and avoids being caught, but the rest are taken away. We then see Mile at a police station. Frank tells the police that Mile went into the forest due to drug use and has no connection with the creatures. Julie helps support Frank because she doesn't know about Mile's condition and suggests they release him. However, Mile needs to sign a form. When the officer asks Mile to sign, he tears the paper because he has forgotten how to hold a pen. The officer hands him another paper, but instead of signing, Mile growls like a wolf, revealing his true nature. Before the officer can react, Frank knocks him unconscious and seals the paper himself, helping Mile escape. Frank and Mile flee the city by car, but the police begin chasing them. Frank takes a road into the forest and, once deep inside, tells Mile to run into the woods and be free forever. Mile runs joyfully into the forest, finally embracing who he truly is. And with that, the movie ends. Please subscribe to Majora Explainer channel.